Episode 3.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Finance Podcast, your training resource for being a happy, healthy, and wealthy dad.
Hey everyone, we're here with Stan Efferding, the Rhino, the world's strongest pro bodybuilder. He recently combined for 2,300 pounds in his three main lifts: squat, deadlift, and bench. Stan, what were those numbers exactly?
Yeah, 275. That was an 865-pound squat, a 600 bench, and an 837 deadlift, and that's raw, just knee wraps on that, no suits.
Right, just knee wraps and a belt, I guess?
Yeah, I did that when I was 45, and then I retired real quick.
Oh,
started adding up on me.
And you're 49, right? Right now?
Yep, 49 now. That's right.
Wow.
Why do you say it like that?
Well, I was guessing. I didn't want to offend you if
it's
you were 46.
It's the way it feels. You don't have to make it sound that way.
So, very cool. And so you're also a father, coach, entrepreneur, and inventor. He's got his own product. So you're a bit of a renaissance man, right, Stan?
Yeah, I'm just out making a buck wherever I can, and, I love the industry. And so, more recently I've started to stay involved in the industry as a coach and doing seminars and traveling around. And then I invented the Kooler, which is a product for athletes, as well as my clothing line. So I'm just going to hang around for a while, like some dust usually does, like gold.
So how did, I guess we're talking about the now, how did your journey start? So if we rewind, did it start in fitness? You just a strong guy and you started powerlifting?
No, I was a little kid. I was 135 pounds when I got to college, and so I just wanted to bulk up. Just wanted to go to the gym and put on some muscle. And from there, it was just my life's love, my passion, something that I've enjoyed. It was never intended to be a career. Bodybuilding isn't a career for that matter. Yeah. But it sure was a great hobby to have over all those years. I could have picked worse ones.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So, very cool. And right now you've got a son and a daughter. What are their ages?
My daughter's almost 5 and my son's almost 3 now. So I started late. I've already calculated it. I'll probably be 65 when I drop him off to college.
Yeah.
Go party.
Well, they can depend. Maybe they won't move in with you after college then, right?
I doubt that. The way things are going, I sure hope it improves. But, boy, I tell you, economy's been in the shitters for a long time.
Yes. Yeah, I've got a 1 and a 3-year-old, so I'm a little behind you, but I'm trying to catch up, I guess.
Yeah, it's a blessing. Something new every day. I'll tell you what. The kids are a lot smarter than we were when we were that age, for sure. And they got those little iPads, and so, geez, nowadays they seem to have so much information.
Right.
So knowledgeable.
Soaking it in. That's crazy. They're going to be a lot smarter than us. That's for sure.
No kidding. We didn't have the internet when I was in college, and so you always have to take the advice of the nearest meathead. And it wasn't always good advice, so I'm happy to be part of that revolution and to see so much good information now on the internet. The hard part's sifting through it, but nonetheless, it's there.
Yeah. You did this a little late, fatherhood. So how did fatherhood change you? That's a tough question, I guess. But
well, I was fortunate already to be at the tail end of my competitive career, which is very time-consuming and selfish, that endeavor. Mm-hmm. The more and more you want to progress in competitive athletics, it seems like the more and more time it takes and the more and more sacrifices you have to make. And so I was fortunate. I think the timing was right for me. And it's been a blessing. I really enjoy it. One of the things that I say a lot now is that I finally realized I'm not the most important person in the world. It's really given me a new focus. So I enjoy it. I really do. And I think that, I probably wish I'd have done it 10 years ago or 15, to be honest with you, because I never realized what a joy it would be. And I use all of my time management skills, of course, and my planning and discipline now to focus on making sure that, I can spend more time with them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's you can't spend 3 hours in the gym anymore, that kind of thing.
No. But you know what I find out, though, and I think people might remember a long time ago when Arnold had talked about between 1 year and the next, he had put a significant amount more time in the gym. He was training 4 or 5 hours a day for a whole year. And he came back to the following year at the Olympia, and he wasn't even any better than he was the year before. At some point there's a law of diminishing returns. And I think what I found out with all of my competitive career, and now that I have kids, and I'm just trying to get the highest return on investment from my training, is that I don't need to invest nearly as much time, and I didn't lose as much as I thought I would.
Right.
By any stretch of the imagination. I don't have to eat nearly as much food. I don't have to train as often or as hard. It seems like there's a happy medium there where if you just get enough and you're consistent enough that you can maintain or even gain in some areas, even at my age. And
so it sounds like kind of what you're saying is that having kids almost forced you to train a little smarter with a shorter amount of time.
Absolutely. Well, I've made some economies in my training so that I can get multiple benefits from what I do. I don't have to, just specifically, for instance, obviously I wanted to be in better shape, better condition, and look more at longevity, hold lower body fat, not have the water retention or the excess body weight, which is, detrimental to health long term. And so, I didn't want to do a ton of cardio either. So I incorporated what I call HIIT under load, high intensity interval training under load, into my workouts. And so every exercise I pick, I try and shorten the rest periods. I try and make it something that's going to induce, elevated heart rate for an extended period of time. That way I get my quote unquote cardio. And an example of that might be now I do 20 rep sets of squats, which are brutal. And I'll do weighted carries, and then try and shorten the time intervals in between and the distance under time under tension. Those kinds of things give me both the cardiovascular benefit and the conditioning benefit, as well as maintaining the lean body mass I'd still like to maintain. I do upright rows to a press overhead, and if I do 10, 12 repetitions of those, when you set the weight down, you're gasping for air. So I'm not sitting on any machines. I'm not taking long rest periods. And I'm generally doing higher repetitions, which is better for my joints, of course, because the heavier weights can weigh heavy on the joints, particularly at my age, and the damage I already did in powerlifting, the knees and the hips and the shoulders. So that, to be specific, that's what I do now, and I don't train every day either. I can get away with training 3 to 4 days a week with that kind of intensity and without having to injure myself with heavy weights or spend a ton of time doing cardio.
Is there any kind of
split? Very good.
In terms of, is there a legs day or a back day, kind of that sort of thing?
Well, generally speaking, I get the highest return on my investment from legs. So I train legs twice a week, and I only train upper body once a week. And oddly enough, my upper body has, to me, either maintained or in some areas maybe even improved as a result of the leg training, because a lot of what I do is under load. When you put a bar on your back and do 20 repetitions with it, and then do repeated sets of that has an effect on the whole body, stimulating muscle growth. The tube that bar is sitting on has to stay strong and stable from neck to ankle. And so that type of exercise, the weighted carries, is another example of putting my body under load as opposed to sitting on a machine or doing an exercise that doesn't work through the core. I'll do chins and dips as opposed to flat bench press, because both of those require core stabilization. And again, I'm under load, even if in a reverse sense. So those are the kinds of exercises I pick that I think give me the biggest return on my investment. I can do fewer of them less often. And for a shorter period of time in the gym, I can get in and out 40 minutes. Or some mornings, if I can't get to the gym, I'll wake up and do my prison yard workout, and I'll just do chin-ups and push-ups in my house.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by investing less time in the gym, get a higher return on my investment from the exercises I do, and generally improving my health along the way at the same time, because my goals are different. I don't need to be huge. I don't need to be competitively strong. I just want to be fit and lean and still muscular.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, and I think the same thing when I see guys, strapped up, wearing belts, all kinds of stuff, just to squat, 340 instead of 315. And I'm thinking, what are you really doing here? We're not. This isn't the Olympics. You're not going to win anything in this gym.
Yeah.
And you're just.
And you kind of have to redefine yourself at some point as as a person who's not an athlete anymore, but you still want to be athletic, you kind of have to redefine yourself. And I had to back away from that heavy, low bar hip squat type of exercise, which had such a huge, kind of a destructive nature on the knees and hips. And I went to a high bar narrow stance. Well, when I started a high bar narrow stance, I had a hard time doing 135 without feeling a lot of, odd, creaks and groans and pains throughout the body. And that's from a guy who was squatting, at one time 900 to go down to 135 and start all over again, learning how to walk again. And that took a long time. It took months. And eventually, after maybe a year or two, I was still learning and improving on that lift. Now I can do 405 for sets of 20, but that took me a long, long time, and it's a totally different form, and it has a totally different impact on the body. It doesn't hit my hips and my knees because I'm breaking at the hips and sitting down behind the weight, so I keep more of a vertical shin, all the things that I didn't do powerlifting. And I'm not interested in building up an extraordinary amount of fatigue in my body. I want to feel good. I train so I can feel better, have more energy throughout the day, not so I'm tired and my bones and joints ache. I like a good muscle pain. That's a good hurt. You walk up the stairs and you can feel your quads and you're like, oh, that was a great workout. But if you walk up the stairs and you feel your hips and knees, that's the wrong direction for a guy to sit.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And do you find that now that I imagine you're probably sitting more, probably at a desk more, is that affecting your hips? Because for me and some other, guys who sit a lot at work, we have problems with our hip flexors and just general tightness, kind of in the wrong areas, kind of messing up your hip balance through sitting.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. And I just read a research report recently that said that one of the most beneficial things you can do, and I've always applied this like when I'm flying or whatever, is to get up every hour on the hour. Set your clock. So that even if you're at the desk all day, don't grind through so you're sitting there for 2-3 hours. Get up every hour on the hour, or 40 minutes. whatever the time may be, and walk around. And don't just walk around for 2 minutes. Walk around for 10 minutes. I've always struggled, and I did a rant. I've got the Rhino's Rant series out. And I talked about a lot of the things that I think had a huge impact on me and my general health and my competitive performance. And one of the things I talked about was the fact that my HbA1c was elevated, my blood sugars. I wasn't in the pre-diabetic range, but I was right on the verge. And those can be brought down significantly just with walking. And what I do now in particular is after each meal, I go walk for 10 minutes. And that's been shown to be much more effective than walking for 40 minutes once a day for reducing blood sugars and improving digestion. So 10 minutes is extraordinary. If I was just in Miami last week, I started training Hafthor Bjornsson, Mountain from the Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And we met up in Miami. And one of the things I do when I'm traveling or even at home, if I go to a restaurant, when I'm done eating, I don't sit around and chit-chat or surf my Facebook. I get up and I walk outside and I go 5 minutes away from the restaurant, turn around and come 5 minutes back before I get in my car. That's part of my regular routine now. Every meal I eat, I stand up and I get out and I walk for 10 minutes. And it has an extraordinary impact. And that applies to what you just said. When you're at work and you're sitting for a long period of time, schedule in those brief, brisk walks. Just 10 minutes every hour. Get up and move around and swing your arms around. Increases insulin sensitivity dramatically. And there's doctors who believe that sitting can be a disease-causing for too long, can be, potentially very harmful for your health.
Yeah, so is that what it is?
Truck drivers, that's true.
So that walking makes you more insulin sensitive? Is that kind of the...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. And it improves the blood flow and everything else through the hips. And I did a rant where I talked about the number one thing you can do for recovery, and that was all about blood flow. It was all about moving the joint through its range of motion. Stretching isn't the answer. It's not. You have to move that body through its range of motion. And when you get tight, again, stretching's not the answer. The active recovery types of things, actually swinging the body part or muscle group through its range of motion and allowing it to slowly and gradually develop greater range of motion. So movement is key, and stretching does not qualify as movement, static stretching. So, get out and about, move, and that blood will do everything for you. It's key. It's the life force.
Yeah, and like most people, I thought static stretching was a good thing that everyone did, and it was great for your hamstrings and all this stuff. And over the last few years, I found better results when I stopped doing static stretching and did other things. It was wild. It was kind of hard to believe.
Absolutely. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you'd watch all the football players come out in the field. They'd be in pairs. They'd be all sitting out on the field stretching with their partner, pushing on their back, and they're in the straddle position, trying to touch your toes. You notice nobody does that anymore.
All right.
Because it's counterproductive.
So
there's a lot of, we don't have to get into all the depths of it. I'm just saying, if you're going to choose something, choose that 10-minute walk every hour. Choose active recovery, swinging the body around, as opposed to the stretching.
And so bouncing back to insulin, what about, pixie sticks after a workout, or, these things people do to spike insulin right after a workout? Is that effective? Is that BS?
I mean, that's all fine and good. I don't think it's a major contributor. I lump all of those things into the 1%. Mm-hmm. The creatine, the pixie sticks, the carb timing, and the supplements, the protein powders, or whatever else. I lump all that into the 1%. If that's what you're chasing, that's great. Chase it. Yeah. But the 99% is what people do horribly. They don't sleep enough or well enough. They don't eat well enough.
Right.
They don't train with any sense of focus or progressive nature often enough, consistent enough, or with the right focus. So, I mean, there's big things out there that you can do. They don't get blood tests. They don't see if they have deficiencies. They just shotgun and take a whole pile of things. This is all part of the rant that I've talked about each of these in great detail.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be repeating myself for those who have already seen them, but they're so important. And everything else is 1%. And oftentimes people start asking me questions. I realize the bulk of what they're asking me is in that tiny little 1%. And then when I ask them questions, I find out, I've got 6 hours of sleep here, 5 hours there, and my training suffering a little bit. I got some injuries, blah, blah, blah. My diet, it's kind of fucked. So that's what I find. And I always assume that when somebody comes to me, they've at least got control of those items. But it turns out it's the big things that folks let go, and they've spent so much time focusing on those tiny little pixie sticks. I mean, come on. Seriously?
Yeah.
How's your training? How's your diet? How's your sleep? And is it consistent? And have you maximized and optimized it? Because those things will give you a huge return.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, because, the things I see people caring about at the gym are the workout shoes they have, maybe the $100 belt they're wearing, all these things.
Yeah,
It's just like, just show up here, an hour every day and lift something.
Yeah, and make yourself a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Take your body somewhere it hasn't been before. And there's all kinds of ways of doing that. You can set PRs in a number of different ways, whether it be pounds per hour or pounds per week, the frequency volume approach for, a lot of repeated bouts that gets you better hypertrophy. Whether the rest periods could be adjusted, the exercises that you choose, are you getting the most return on that investment? Do you spend a whole lot of time doing tricep pushdowns and bicep curls when you could just be doing reverse grip chins, and dips and close grip push-ups? And that's part of that economies thing again, about getting the most return on your investment, and then, resting and recovering and coming back and doing it again. It's the cumulative effect of those and the consistency that gives you those tiny little gains over an extended period of time, rather than going in there and blasting yourself and finding out that all you're doing is injuring or over-fatiguing yourself, and you're not recovering well enough without the sleep and diet right. So there's so much more important things to focus on than all this drabble about the supplement world.
Right.
I just, I don't believe in any of it. I believe deficiencies are a problem, so get a blood test. Find out what you're deficient in, supplement there. I talked about that with my vitamin D rant, and how critical vitamin D can be for hemoglobin A1C, for digestion, for recovery, for your immune system. Anybody who's deficient in vitamin D and is running around worrying about pixie sticks, they're stepping over $100 bills to pick up nickels, and I just don't understand it. It seems so easy to me.
Is there a certain age you recommend starting getting your first blood test, or is it, you could be doing it at 18?
The second you walk in the gym.
Okay, gotcha.
Beginner, doesn't matter. Now is the age I recommend. Whatever now is for you.
Right.
It's very important, And I say it in a bigger sense, too, because the comprehensive blood tests I recommend, I set up at stanefferding.com. I got a link that says blood test, and it takes you to private MD labs, and you select blood work, and you can go down to, just over the internet, you get a requisition form, and you can go down to any lab near you, LabCorp or Quest Lab, and order a blood test. Within 3 days, they send you the results. That's how easy it is. And the fact that nobody does it is just mind-boggling to me, because let's say, for instance, you're not even an athlete. You're just somebody that's, getting into training for the first time. And I want to put on some muscle and I want to lose some fat. Well, yeah, you can eat well and you can sleep right and you can get on, and you can train hard. But what if you're low T? Your results are going to be for shit, period. You can bust your ass, pay a trainer tons of money, be very disciplined in the gym, and if you've got a hypogonadal problem, well, obesity can lead to low T, and that can be remedied with exercise and diet, and then potentially your testosterone can increase. So it's not always a matter of supplementing. But the point being is that your progress is going to be significantly impacted by that knowledge. Same with thyroid. The number one prescribed medication in the country is thyroid. If you're low in thyroid, or you've got Hashimoto's or some sort of deficiency in thyroid, and you want to lose weight, it's going to be very difficult. No matter how much you diet or exercise, it's going to be very difficult. The answer still is to diet and exercise, but without that other piece of knowledge, your results are going to be seriously hampered by not optimizing deficiencies, whether it be hormones, whether it be vitamins, whether it be addressing the blood problems with blood sugars, etc. Right. And those are pretty easy things. I'm not trying to make this sound complicated. Those are pretty easy things to solve.
Right. I'll shamefully admit that I haven't had my blood work done, but I feel dumb not doing it, and you're motivating me. You're motivating me to get it done. So
Efferding.com.
Yeah, I'll go to your website. For the listeners, I'll put his website in our show notes, as well as his YouTube link to his Rhino rants, because those are good. But,
yeah, please do. Please
yeah,
do.
no,
yeah, it's a lot of good information, and it's free.
And so
you got to listen to me plug my cooler, but other than that, it's free.
Yeah. We'll do one more on fitness, then we'll move on to kind of the entrepreneur side of you. So,
sure.
What do you say to the guy who's 30, who's thinking about getting in shape? Maybe he's a little doughy. He was athletic, real athletic 5 years ago and looked great. I'll be honest. So, I'm 29, almost 30, and it almost feels like that age where, maybe I should just accept this because I'm getting old. But then you look at someone like you at 49, and it's like, wow, I've got, for me, I'm 20 years until I get to you, right? I should be able to, make up some good ground here. But I guess, what do you say to those guys?
I don't make concessions at any age, and I got better. I got stronger when I was 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. So I don't make concessions at any age. And now I just posted a picture on my Instagram last week of the current condition that I'm in. And I'm probably not over 7% body fat.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do anything extraordinary to stay there, except I'm really consistent. And I find that I have more time because of that discipline and consistency. I meal prep, so now I'm not running around trying to figure out what to eat, when to eat. And every time I do a meal, it takes me 2 minutes to prep it because it's sitting right there in the fridge. I don't have to turn on the grill and start something fresh. I want to spend that time with my kids.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend an hour or go to a restaurant, have to sit and wait, eat the food, come home. Driving to the gym and back sometimes for me is an inconvenience. It's time away from other things I want to do.
Yeah. So
I've got some dumbbells and a squat rack in my garage, and sometimes I told you I'll come out and I'll just do my push-ups and my chin-ups and some squats or some dips. It's pretty easy for me. So I don't miss, it doesn't cost me any extra time.
Right.
Because I've managed it in such a way that it actually saves me time. And you have to kind of take a look at, if you're the 30-year-old guy, what's preventing you from starting? Do you watch too much TV? Are you surfing on the internet? Are you on your phone too much? Wasting time that could be valuable to you. And find out if that's a worthy investment for you. And secondarily, consistency is the overwhelming most important factor of the whole thing. So you don't have to go in there and beat yourself up and try and pretend like you're 21 again. I recently started working with Flex Wheeler again. We trained together, of course, back in 08 and 09 and off and on over the years. But he's moved here to Vegas. And so he was the kind of guy who would go into the gym and try and do what he used to do. Next thing you know, he'd hurt his back. He had surgery on his back. He hurt his shoulder. And then he can't train at all. So the first thing we did was slowed way down and said, look, let's just make it there. Let's do stuff that doesn't hurt. Let's have fun. Let's enjoy it. Once it's enjoyable, it's a little more easy to do. Mm-hmm. The only program of it that's going to be worth benefit to you is the one you'll do. Yeah. And that's what's most important. So I don't know if that helps answer the question.
I think it does. And
I'd say
I love that you're using the word investment in reference to time, because that's the way I feel about it too. And I looked up some statistics just for the dads out there. Like you mentioned, Facebook, watch TV. So I read that the average dad, this is the Bureau of Labor statistics, the average dad with a kid under 6 watch TV 1.9 hours a day. And then Facebook reports, I think the average user's on there for 40 minutes. YouTube saying their average sessions, I think 45 minutes, right? And so a lot of these guys who don't have quote-unquote time, they've got the time, right? They're just not using it.
You've got the time. These damn electronics, and I watch it with my kid. I have a 17-year-old stepson, and I watch it with him. The electronics can just rob you of your time. Yeah. I have to take the phone away, or you'll stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. We're tired the next morning. You got to be able to shut those off. I mean, even a trip to the bathroom can be, what used to be 3 or 4 minutes, with a magazine 10 minutes. Yeah. With an iPhone, it's an hour now, and your legs are falling asleep. So everything becomes, you start wasting so much time. And, by the same token, you don't have to invest as much time as you think to get the results you want. You just have to be consistent. I was doing my 20-minute morning routine for a while there and only getting to the gym maybe twice a week. So, and I wasn't losing much. I was staying pretty darn close to what my post-competition weight. I dropped about 30 pounds on purpose just to be more fit and more healthy. And I've kind of maintained that for 3 years now, almost regardless of how much time and energy I invest. Sometimes I'll go in 5 days a week. Sometimes I'll go in twice a week. I get the same benefit from twice a week as 5. Yeah. But I'm cautious about getting that ROI, doing the right exercises, making myself a little uncomfortable consistently. So that's the ticket.
So we'll move on to your business or businesses. So I'm not sure what all you're involved in. I know you've got the Kooler. You invented this product, right? And
Yep.
Like, how did I guess your business or your investing, maybe whatever you're doing, how did that start? If you're willing to talk about what?
Well, I worked in the business world. I managed properties, multifamily properties, and I ran a telephone company as a vice president. So I had some intellectual property. I had some. I just met with a gentleman yesterday. He was talking about this very thing. How do you get started in business? Well, I started doing something I already had some familiarity with, and that's what I highly recommend folks do. And if they want to get into a business, they should learn everything about it. Probably go to work for a company to learn about it. Mm-hmm. So I started my own telephone company because I had been vice president of one, and I had the knowledge. I had the intellectual property. And it was grueling. I built that from scratch through a lot of debt initially and a lot of hard work into a $25 million business with over 100 employees doing business in 25 states. So that was, my most successful venture. About that time, I started investing in real estate. But I had a history of that. I managed multifamily properties. I helped develop property. And so I already had an understanding. And so I was buying and selling apartment communities. I started with a little small one that I had sweat equity in. I went and managed it, lived on site, and ran it and turned it and made a little money on it, invested in another. So eventually I was buying and selling bigger properties, 100 units here, 125 units there, 85 units here, all up and down the I-5 corridor in Oregon and Washington. And then I started building some homes, subdivisions, single-family homes. And then the market collapsed on the housing. So I had to get out of that business real quick. And I started an engineering firm down in Dallas. And although I'm not an engineer, I hired engineers. Yeah. And, I used their talent to bid on projects. And that business I still own and still operate as a silent partner. And I have my business partner runs the majority of that. And then, like I said, I had this passion in the fitness industry. I've always traveled around to expos, seminars, made appearances, written for magazines, etc. And so I just came across this idea of making this cooler so people could have. I was training a team of football players out in California, and I noticed hardly any of them had their water jugs, and none of them had any nutrition. They had no shakes or anything like that. And so I created the cooler because you can carry your water or ice water around and have a shaker bottle inside. So you're not trying to tooth this thing and it stays cold. It was 95 degrees outside. So, I push nutrition big. I push getting in minerals and electrolytes, whether it be through sodium, carbohydrates, proteins. Obviously, a lot of the research that is now painfully obvious to everyone is that if you're an athlete doing doubles, like a football player, morning and night practices, that when you get that post-workout recovery nutrition in, you tend to hold weight and strength longer throughout the preseason and into the season. So I started promoting the product. I got an engineer to design it on a CAD program. I went to China and had a manufacturer for me. Brought it back here and started distributing it, found a distributor, and started marketing it, mostly through social media. Yeah. And so that's kind of my side project that keeps me involved in the business. And I travel from, the Olympia to the Arnold to the LA Fit Expo to the Europa Expos, and I promote that product as part of the, so it keeps me involved in the industry. And the rants were a result of my wanting to get more, social media out there so people could know more about me and my products that I sell. So that's how that all developed.
So does the cooler ship from China direct to your distributor, and then it goes wherever from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's important because it's bulky, so I have to bring large orders over. So I bring a whole 40-foot container and I drop it at the distribution point. And the distributors they can ship more affordably than me. If I have to ship a cooler, it costs me $10, $12. They can ship them for $4. So the customer, the end user, gets a better opportunity through them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't know if you had about a million coolers in your basement or attic or something,
I did have a warehouse full of thousands of them, but when you have to handle everything, that's kind of a general rule if you want to talk about business in general, is that if you've got to touch every order, you're going to have a hell of a time getting wealthy. It's the same concept in terms of trading time for money. If you're a massage therapist or a personal trainer, you've only got so many hours in the day, and that hour is only so valuable to the client. So you have to find some way to make money while you sleep, I call it, about creating, distribution, retail locations that can sell products that when you wake up in the morning, all you do is check your account and you get to do all the market.
Yeah. So what do you think the hardest part of the cooler up to this point has been?
Well, this hasn't been too difficult, but the reason is because I was able to finance the startup, which is generally the most difficult thing for most people. Now, when I started my phone company, I had to sell my home, cash in my 401k. I ran up $150,000 in credit card debt. I owed my vendors hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was very precarious, that position, because I didn't have cash, a lot of cash, enough cash to start up the business. Now, eventually, I was able to turn that thing around and slowly start to generate a profit and made it big. With the cooler, of course, you've got, you want a patent, that's going to cost you $20,000 or thereabouts. If you want to buy tooling to manufacture a product in China, the tooling can cost, mine in particular was $70,000 worth of tooling. Yeah. You got to buy product and bring it over here and have it sitting there. Nobody's going to pay you for the first batch. Right. So you got another $50,000. So I was $150,000 in cash up front on the deal. I generally encourage people to start businesses that don't require a lot of upfront cash, and work out of the trunk of your car as long as you can until you have enough revenue to reinvest. Because once you start, I guess the general rule here is that once you start accumulating recurring costs, such as rent, employees, etc., those are some huge burdens that you may not have to endure if you work out of the home. And don't have employees to start with. So until you get income, until you have an actual profitable model that's scalable, then you can start expanding on that. But you have to have a proof of concept first that actually pays you more than your expenses, or it's not a business.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. With all that fixed cost, you could be underwater even more before you ever make a dime in the business, right? And then the whole thing's sunk.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody wants to open up a big office and have some desks and put a sign out front. Well, where's the revenue to support that kind of thing? Because don't expect it to, to magically appear just because you have an office and some business cards and some employees. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Create the revenue first. Create the income first.
Yeah. Thanks so much, man. This has been great. Appreciate all your time. And for all the listeners, in the show notes, I'm going to have links to thekooler.com, Stan's website, and his playlist. And go ahead, in the Kooler, it holds your pre-workout and your post-workout separately, right? And then also...
Yeah, there's two, it's at thekooler.com with a K.
Yeah.
Kooler.com. There's a video there, there's a picture so you can see it. I thought it was funny when you reached out to me to do the interview. You said it would take about 20 minutes, and I thought to myself, obviously you've never talked to me before, because that's one question.
No,
I tend to be a lot long-winded, but I'm passionate about my business and about my, competitive career, fitness, and health. So I always end up giving more information than I think people can that they need, I think.
No, that's perfect. You've got the experience, man. You're just dropping value bombs everywhere, so everyone's going to love it, and I really appreciate you being on.
Awesome. Thanks. It's good talking to you.
Well, all right, guys, that's a wrap on Stan in this episode. Thanks so much, Stan, for stopping by. As all you guys can tell, Stan's a really smart guy. He's got a lot of knowledge. So check him out in the show notes. I'll have all the links to his Instagram, his website, and his product. And that's a wrap. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fatherhood Fitness Finance Podcast. You can find us at fatherhoodfitnessfinance.com.